So welcome guys, this is the 6 o'clock Sunday evening UK Crime Panel 1 with Nick Quantrill, Alex Nye, Paul Toolan and Caz Maston's chairing the event. So I'll pass you on to Caz to...
Hi everyone. Shall we start off with you just introducing yourselves and telling us a little bit about all of your books? Maybe if we start with Alex down at the bottom.
With myself?
Yeah.
Okay, yep, that's fine. Sorry, I didn't quite catch what you said. Yep, that's fine. My name's Alex Nye, and I write historical novels, historical fiction. I've got 2 historical novels published. Arguing with the Dead, about Mary Shelley, which is about Mary Shelley living alone in a tiny cottage. As the Thames freezes over, she sorts through the snowstorm of her husband's scattered papers and is reminded of their past. And she's haunted by the ghost of Shelley's first wife, Harriet. And as well as that, I have For My Sins, which is about Mary Queen of Scots. And the year is 1587. Mary Stuart is sitting in an English prison cell, stitching her tapestries. And while she's doing this, she's haunted by the ghosts of her past, and she needs to tell her own story, the secrets, the lies, the truth. And that's what this one is about. I also write books for children as well, which also tend to have a lot of ghosts in them. Chill, Shiver, Darker Ends. And then my most recent was When We Get to the Island, and that's not a ghost story. That one is about a boy from Syria on the run across the wilds of Scotland. So, but these are my 2 sort of adult historical books. So that's fine. I'll let you go to someone else.
Paul?
Hello, yes, I'm Paul Toolan. I write, well, bits of everything really, poetry, plays, short stories, but mostly crime. All my books, and so far, I'm just writing the 4th in the series. I've got the title, Killing in the title. This is an Easter killing, if I can get it near the camera. There we go. And to give you a further clue, that's a January killing, you know. So they're seasonal too. You could probably pick that up. They're rural settings, really, village crime. I'm a Yorkshireman who finds himself now retired in Somerset, and strange enough, my detective, who's called Inspector Zig Batten, is a Yorkshireman who is living now in Somerset under a bit of a cloud. Him, not me. That's basically it. I'm working on my 4th crime book in the series. I've got another book of short stories out as well, and a couple of plays, one of which was just about to be performed the day that they put lockdown in, on the 23rd of March. So there we are. Maybe it'll happen again in the future.
Oh dear. Nick?
Yeah, hello everyone. I'm Nick Quantrill. I'm the author of the Joe Geraghty series of crime novels set in my home city of Hull. Joe Geraghty is a small-time private investigator operating in the old town of the city. And I wrote originally a trilogy of novels featuring him, Broken Dreams, The Late Greats, and The Crooked Beat. And then I kind of thought I was done with him. And I was kind of working on other bits and pieces and had another crime novel published. And then when I got the rights back from the original publisher, Fahrenheit Press asked me if they could put them back out again. And as part of that kind of deal, I agreed that I was going to write a 4th in the trilogy, as I keep thinking of it in my head, after thinking that I was done with Joe. So that comes out August 28th. It's called The Sound of the Sinners. And it sees Joe Geraghty returning back to his city after he's walked away from it like 3 or 4 years ago. So that's kind of where I am as a writer at the moment. The other thing I do is I'm a co-founder of the Hull Noir Crime Festival, which it ran originally in 2017 as part of the UK City of Culture programme. And then we struggled to get the funding to put it back on again when we kind of lost culture. We do no more culture in Hull. And we got the money to do it again for this year, and obviously we got hit by lockdown. So currently the plan is to run the festival again next June and bring a series of crime authors to the city for the region to enjoy, hopefully. And that's me. Yeah, so it's a lot of hard work when a festival on, but you know, when it kind of actually happens and you get all these kind of people coming in because they enjoy crime novels and they enjoy meeting the readers and the writers, it's, you know, it's a great weekend. So fingers crossed next March we can do it again.
Well done.
Thank you. You don't kind of think about the logistics of doing a festival when you put them on as well. You literally scramble around for chairs and stages and things like that. But yeah, it's been really rewarding as well. So yeah, everybody should come to Hull hopefully next March and enjoy a festival.
Good plan. So my first question that I want to ask you all, if that's okay, is what's the importance of the location in your book?
Yeah, I mean, I started writing the longer form. I've written for years, but I've never had time to write long novels. And I started writing the longer form, the crime novels, partly because I was in a new county I'd not lived in before, in South Somerset, and I wanted to find out about it. And I'm a walker, so I joined a walking group. And 2 of the novels have come out of ideas that people in the walking group have mentioned to me in the middle of nowhere in Somerset, usually on top of a hill. There aren't that many hills in Somerset, it's fairly flat. So setting is really important. And I'd read an awful lot of urban crime in the past, and I thought I wanted to get away from city life a bit, because that's why I retired to the country. And so I started writing rural crime instead, and I really did enjoy that. And you can have it makes research interesting, because you just put your walking boots on and go and have a 5-mile walk, and there's a plot waiting for you, really. It sounds so simple, doesn't it? Not really.
Who wants to go next? Alex or Nick? Alex, I think.
Okay, I'll go next. Well, setting is really important for me. Setting for me is almost like a character in the book. It's very important, even from my very first children's novel, Chill, which was set on Sheriff Muir near Dunblane, where I live now. And I've lived in Scotland for about 25 years, 26 years, something like that. And the Scottish setting is really, really important. Just the wild landscape, the history as well. But setting is vital for me. I always, my way into a story is always something to do with, the wind moving through trees, or moving through grasses, or the murmur of a quarry burn, or something like that. So that's my way in. Even when I'm doing any kind of creative writing, it's just the way I am. Other people do it differently, but that's my way in. But setting is really important. And most of my books do have a Scottish setting. I wrote a children's book a YA book called Darker Ends, and that has Glencoe as a setting, with, because it creates atmosphere and the ghosts of the past, the tragic history there. But with Mary Shelley, my most recent, it's about the life of Mary Shelley, arguing with the dead. And this has a variety of settings, which I couldn't necessarily afford to visit, because Mary Shelley ended up in all these historical locations as well. So you have to visit them in your imagination, really, like half-ruined castles and villas with sort of staircases to nowhere, literally half-ruined, where they were staying in Europe. And it was just a question of using my imagination, which I suppose we all get bits of from things we might have seen on television, books we've read, and imagined ourselves in the past when we were children even. And we've got all these images in our head without knowing it, and you sort of pull on those and draw on those as well. So, and imagining London, I do know London very well because I lived there for quite a while in lots of different places there. So, and a lot of it is a London setting, but again, set in the beginning of the 19th century. And, so it's just using a lot of imagination for that. But Scotland does creep into it again, where she's sent up to Dundee because her stepmother couldn't cope with her, really. She was being a bit of a pain, so she sent her up by ship, by boat, up to Dundee. And she would sail in a boat across to visit a friend, the people that she was staying with, their sister. And I liked writing those bits of those parts of the book. And also I do like wintry settings. I can't help it. I just like I do like the snow as a sort of background setting. So again, we've got a blizzard as it starts off, that she's it's the winter by the Thames and it's blizzardy and cold. So I'll leave it there. In case I talk too much, let someone else have a turn.
Okay.
Yeah, so, for me, location, I think what Alex said about place being a character, that's really important to me as a writer. You know, all my novels are set in Hull, which is my home city. It's where I live, it's where I work. And when I started writing the Joe Garrity novels, it felt like I was the only writer in the city. You know, it felt like there was literally nobody was writing crime novels. Nobody seemed to be writing generally. So it was a blank canvas for me, really, to have this kind of conversation about my city, really make sense of it in my own head. Because when I started writing Broken Dreams, the first in the series, Hull had just been crowned the UK Crap Town of the Year by this kind of awful book publisher down in London who've never been to Hull. And by the time I'd been the third one, The Crooked Bee, we'd just been crowned the UK City of Culture. So the city just been on this amazing journey from nothing to being, you know, like the hub of culture for 2017. And it was such an opportunity to use it as a backdrop and trying to explain why that happened and what the changes were that were going on in the city. So it was very much a conversation between myself and the city, I think, but told through the private investigator story. And it's something that goes on and on, because the new book, which is out at the end of this month, The Sound of the Sinners, I think that's very much about the kind of the results of the City of Culture year, effectively. You know, the winners and the losers, particularly, because, you know, when you pump an awful lot of money into a small city, some people will certainly win and some people will certainly lose. So yeah, I mean, I've always wanted to write about Hull, and I think clearly I'm not the only writer about Hull, because, you know, there's plenty around now with people like David Mark, Louise Beach, and the list goes on, really, in the crime genre. So, you know, it's kind of the book to my truth about the place, but it is, I think, probably more so than the characters. It's really about the city, I think, my novels, and that's kind of why I want to keep writing about Hull.
Can I come in there? I invented the fictional town of Parminster because I didn't really want to locate my police headquarters in a recognizable place, although I suppose it is. But all the other village mentions are all accurate, they're all real. And because I wanted to go wider afield, every book has got scenes in Greece, which is my second love, really. I'd be there now if, no offense, so Crete is a particularly keen place, and every book has a setting in Crete, or the first one in Corfu. And the one I'm writing now has got 2 whole sections in Crete. And I love going there and just taking it all in and noting it down by the sea, perhaps with the moon.
I think that's the big thing, isn't it? That sense of, do you stay completely accurate when writing about a place and totally realistic, or do you allow your sort of imagination to wander a bit and create your own environment and your own backdrop? And I think it sounds like you've kind of played with both there, haven't you, effectively?
Yeah, I'm playing it at both ends, I'm afraid. Yeah. I apologize for that. But it does work for me. You know,
absolutely.
Not the real things, but you can disguise them slightly or add new things, which is a freedom, which not everybody has. If you choose a real location, the geography tells you about it, really, doesn't it? You've got to.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of pros and cons in that sense. You know, I'm very much kind of boxed in by what's in Hull, but I kind of like the challenge of working with infrastructure as well. So, yeah, I think it's definitely pros and cons.
But you've got the whole of the East Riding there, which is a beautiful place.
Oh, absolutely. You know, I think Hull as a place is kind of like, it's a city, but it's surrounded by, like you say, great big swathes of blank countryside. It's almost very kind of Scandinavian and Nordic in that sense. And we're only half an hour away from the coast if I want to kind of head out to the sort of the seaside type of places. So there's an awful lot of sort of backdrops and possibilities I can play with as I want to, really. So I'm maybe not as penned as I think I am, possibly.
So my next question, I want to start with Nick, because I noticed when you were putting out stuff about your new Joe Garrity book that you'd made a playlist for it, that was sort of building on the music and things of the city. I wondered if that's a thing you do for all of your books, and if you have like a musical thing as you write. So when we get to Paul and Alex, I want to know if you sort of have music that you listen to as you write.
Yeah, no, I did it more because I was on lockdown and I was kind of scratching around for something to do for half an hour, possibly. But I just thought it'd be interesting to kind of put together a playlist of Hull-based musicians, or music that has kind of sprung from Hull, with people like David Bowie's Spiders from Mars, which was a Hull band, effectively backing David Bowie. So yeah, it was just a way of kind of talking about the character of the place through music, I suppose. And it's just a nice, fun thing to do. And I'm a big music fan, and it kind of does crop up in the novels, you know. invariably what I'm listening to might well be what Joe Garrett's listening to at some point in the book. So yeah, I'm a big music fan, but I don't tend to have it on as I'm writing particularly. I like a little bit of white noise in the background, usually radio with people talking. But music is probably more for pleasure than anything else, I think.
Who wants to go next? Paul, do you have a music thing as you write?
Yes, I do. But I tend to listen to things like Test Match Special writing, if I can. My detective hates cricket, but I like cricket. So I listen to things like Test Match Special because it's on the background. You have it on low. But the detective himself is very much into music, and I've just written a scene a couple of days ago where in the next book he's broken up with his then female interest, and he's in a foul mood, and he switches on the CD on shuffle, and Tom Waits comes on singing, "I hope that I will never fall in love again." So you can use the irony of music, I think, to sort of draw out the character and the situation. So I quite like doing that. It's quite fun. What about Alex?
I like music. I do love music, but I tend to write in silence. You know, I like quite silence. I know other people do have playlists, so occasionally I think to myself, "Oh, that's a good idea," and I try to get that organized. And then I just get distracted by the writing, and the music stops, and I forget about it, or it seems like too much bother juggling everything. But I do like, if I am going to have music. It's quite funny. I saw somebody creep along the background of Paul's camera. But if I am going to have music, it would be something like, you know, Brian Eno, something thoughtful, something that's not too intrusive, that is quite sort of, you know, mysterious and makes you think about, just gets you in the mood, gets you in that kind of mood. But no, I like a lot of silence when I'm writing. Or I do like to write in cafes as well. There is one cafe I absolutely love writing in, because I'm in Dunblane, so I'm an hour from both Edinburgh and Glasgow, and there's lots of beautiful countryside around. But Glasgow has this cafe. Obviously, you can't go there now under these conditions, but it's called the Artisan Roast, and it's so cozy because you go up some steps into this like loft-like space, and I've got my favourite table, which I'm very cross if anybody else is ever sitting there. And I can, as long as people's conversations are not too intrusive. I did have one time when a couple of customers, one was trying to convert another one to some religious persuasion for an hour, and that did put me off, I have to say. But it was still, it's still a nice place to go, this cafe. So I don't mind that kind of background noise going on.
Yeah, it's interesting because I can't write in cafes. I've tried several times, but I just found the whole kind of of them too distracting, and I always end up earwigging on other people. I want to hear what they're talking about, so I find it very difficult to concentrate in cafes.
Listen, earwigging on other people is where I get most of my dialogue.
Well, exactly. I think that's a big thing for writers, isn't it? You're always listening to what people say. So yeah, for me, I just found those environments just way too interesting to actually sit down and do any writing.
Most of them are too, but
I can't work without noise.
Sorry?
I said I'm not a writer, but I can't work without some kind of noise or distraction on in the background.
Yeah.
I'm just putting my finger up to say I'm the same. Before I came on here, I was listening to the music, and I know that cafe in Dunblane because we used to go there for the student conferences.
There's a lovely comment on the stream that says someone follows you because you live in their area.
Sorry, who are you? I'm not sure who you were addressing that to. Is it to me or to?
Yeah, I'm saying there's a lovely comment on the stream that says that she's loving hearing from the crime writers, and she follows you as she lives in your area.
Oh, that's nice. Oh, sorry, I didn't catch what you said. Oh, that's very nice, actually. Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
The next question I'm going to ask you is a bit more of one of my favourite ones that I like to ask all authors when we interview them on the book group, which is, would you ever write a graphic novel of one of your books?
Oh, I can barely draw a stick man, so I'd have to get somebody in to help me. I think if I was going to do a graphic novel, maybe my daughter, she's really good at drawing. She's only 9, which is far better than me already at that type of thing. So I read one by Ian Rankin a few years ago, which was a really interesting thing. So I mean, they're not graphic novels. I don't tend to read them particularly myself regularly, but it's like an audiobook in some ways, isn't it? If people want to consume your words via a graphic novel, then why not? You know, I'd be quite happy to have a graphic novel of my books, I think, yeah.
No, and I couldn't really. And my son keeps asking me to write graphic novels. I think he means that if I wrote one, he'd probably read it. But it's not my bag at all. No, sorry.
Yeah, I don't read graphic novels particularly, but I do like illustrations and I love art, and I'd be happy to try anything really. But yeah, I can't draw though. I'm not, well, I can draw, but not that kind of, you know, not of that standard. But it would be fun to do. I wish that I did have the skill to illustrate though. I would love to do, you know, illustrate my own stories. That would be good. But again, like Nick said, my daughter, she would be very good at that. She's 23, so maybe I should ask her to do that.
The next 2 most favourite questions from our book group is, the first is, do you plot your novels out in detail in advance, or do you just make it up as you go? And do your characters ever surprise you?
Shall I go first?
Yeah, go on.
Okay. Yeah, I am a planner more by nature, and I think increasingly I'm trying to plan more and more, because I tend to find when I will talk to everybody, when I let myself just write freely, I find myself going into sort of all kinds of dead ends and dead alleys, and having to work my way back out of them and untangle and unpick what I've written. So I'm finding there's an awful lot of value in planning and thinking in terms of a general structure. So I generally start with the idea of a 3-act structure, kind of beginning, middle, and end type of thing, and the build-up, and then the very midpoint, and all those kind of like technical sort of points where I think I can hang that as a skeleton to put my novel on. And then I start writing. So I've got a general idea where when I start writing what I'm going to actually do, rather than just kind of letting it all come out and seeing what happens. And I'm finding just the amount of time it's saving and effort, it's just becoming very useful to do that. So yeah, sometimes spending a couple of weeks at the beginning of the process is really valuable to me, as opposed to just kind of, you know, sometimes you want to just get down and write, but just kind of hold them back a little bit and thinking it through a bit more is hopefully going to pay dividends as I get something like a better first draft by the end of the process, I hope.
Does Joe ever mess with your plans?
Sorry?
Does Joe ever mess with your plans?
He does to a degree, but I do try and remember I'm in charge, not Joe. Sometimes, yes, there is always this kind of process, isn't there, where you maybe start with an idea and a bit of a structure in mind, but it does kind of take a very interesting sort of detours and side roads through the plot. So yeah, there is times when I think, oh yeah, maybe that would be more interesting than what I wanted to do originally, and it does come from the characters interacting between themselves. So yeah, I guess there is. I like to have a structure and I like to have a plan, but I think within that it's important to have a little bit of flexibility so that there is still some creativity in the process as I'm going through for the next 6 to 9 months, whatever it will take to write the novel.
Yeah, I think I'm a bit the same, that I like to plan a bit, but I don't like to over-plan, because then if I over-plan, it takes the spontaneity out of it. But I relate to what Nick was saying about the 3 acts, the beginning, middle, and an end. And I do like to have an ending and work towards the ending. The bit I always find difficult, and I have been assured that most writers do, is the middle bit. The middle of a plot. It's very common for it to become a bit floppy and flabby. You know, that you can have a strong beginning, you can work towards a really strong ending, but it's that middle bit sometimes that I sometimes find difficult and go back and rework. So I'm a mixture of both, and my plotting just involves just a couple of pages of simply writing down ideas, really, you know, and that kind of thing. But I'm not as big on plot as I am on character and settings. So that's always something I have to work harder at, I think. You know, so I always have to work harder at that, because you know, I like sort of atmosphere, setting, that kind of thing. And sometimes if I write a short story, I don't always know exactly where it's going. You know, and it can surprise me and, you know, surprise myself where it's going, you know. So, what about Paul?
Well, I'm neither one or the other, I suppose. I'm kind of in the middle. But what I always have is a fairly clear idea of the ending and of the denouement, anyway. So I've always got kind of, if you like, the end of the funnel. So I do let the characters have a little bit of leeway, and I do tweak the plot as I go along quite a bit. But I always know where it's actually going, so that I try and obey that basic rule that says if you're writing something, it's got to have relevance somewhere in the book, somewhere strong in the book. And if it's relevant to the outcome, and I've always got the outcome in mind, then it seems to work for me. Going back to what Alex was saying, I was reading a while back, a lot of writers actually start writing by writing the middle. They've got an idea what's going on first, but they write the middle first, because the middle is, as you say, Alex, notoriously difficult to get right. And I might try that next time.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Sorry, I think I've seen readers, sort of writers talking about writing almost kind of patchwork style, where they maybe just write a scene as it comes to them, and then they kind of go along and stick together at the end. I think you very much find a system that works for yourself as a writer, don't you, and then refine it. There's no kind of right or wrong answer, I don't think, in this type of thing.
I don't want to end up like James Patterson, who apparently writes a 60-page outline before he writes the book, or somebody writes a 60-page outline for him. I don't know which it is. That seems to me a little bit like painting by numbers, where you're filling in the gaps. And it's just it's a sort of personality thing. I don't particularly want to write like that. That's all. I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but it's not for me.
Yeah, I agree. I also like the ideas that you were saying about starting in the middle and trying it that way. And the one thing I like about, you know, writing and my own approach to writing is that even now I'm still trying out different experiments, you know, experimenting on the method, really, so that, you know, I will sort of think, try different ways of making a story idea come alive. And I think that's really nice, to not have that constraint put on you, you know, and to have that freedom to do that. And I think I'm very lucky with my publisher as well, Fledgling, that Fledgling Press, Claire Kane at Fledgling Press, is really, really supportive of me. And I just feel that it gives me the freedom to sort of expand and explore, which is good. Yeah, try different ways. But that's a good plan. I might try that, going in at the middle. Might solve that problem.
I think it would terrify me starting in the middle, but like Paul says, I have to have the ending as well in mind. I think once you've kind of got an ending, it all kind of makes sense then when you work backwards, doesn't it, in your mind? So that's a big thing, I think, having an ending. And weirdly for me, I have to have a title before I start as well. There's something about the process of having a title that means it's real, and I can then start it. If I just write untitled at the top of a screen, it doesn't feel like a book or a novel, and I can't do it. I have to wait for I've got a title in mind.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'd agree with that. Every book I've written, I've had a title first, and because if I don't really know what I'm writing at all.
Yeah.
A concept. I mean, if I had a book called, as you say, A January Killing, I know it's in January, and I know snow and frost and ice are going to be part of the characterization and the setting. So I have to have that. Yes.
Do your titles ever change as you go, though?
Say again?
Do you ever change your title as you go? So you know you have to start with one. Do you ever evolve and change it?
I do, definitely. I find, I don't ever have the title first, you know, or if I do, the publisher changes it, you know, and says, right, I think we could go with this or could go with that. Or that was the case at first when I first started. And it takes me a while to find a title. And and then I have choices, and I just find that quite tricky, you know, because I think, well, is it this, is it that? But by the way, though, I have to say, with this, I didn't have any trouble at all with the title, because with this one, I knew it was going to be For My Sins, because it was taken from a quote from the letter of Mary, Queen of Scots, her last letter before she was executed. And I actually had that title in mind years ago in 1989 when I first started researching Mary Queen of Scots. I'm not suggesting I spent all those years writing it. It's just that, you know, I first had the idea for this with her stitching the tapestries and being haunted by the ghosts of her past. I was much younger, living in Edinburgh. I was an unpublished writer, and I didn't get it published. And back then, very, very near misses. And then much later, when I'd already published as a children's author, my publisher then suggested, I told her about it, and she just loved the idea. So I went, you know, it's a completely different book. I went back to it and reworked it. But that title, For My Sins, was very much in my head since 1989.
My books have changed title. This is the first one, The Killing Tree. That was going to be called The Murder Tree, till I discovered there were two other novels called The Murder Tree by researching on Google. And then I changed it to The Killing Tree, and I discovered that there's an American rock band called The Killing Tree. And I was getting confused on website searches and stuff like that, so I changed it to that. This was going to be called Water Like a Stone, which is a quotation from the hymn In the Bleak Midwinter. And then I discovered that there was a murder story novel already published called Water Like a Stone, and so on. So you have to check. I know you can't, you know, you can't really, you can't copyright a title, but if you've written the same book as two other people, it's not going to help you really when people are searching for your book.
Yeah, and I think that's a very good point about not copying titles that other people have already used, because it makes it that more difficult to find your books. I tend to use song titles for book titles, and I've borrowed quite liberally from The Clash for my last couple of books. Sound of the Sinners and The Rugby Beat are both on the Sandinista album, which I'm working through picking up songs one at a time, I think, for a book title. But I like using song titles as my titles, and it seems to just kind of just work quite nicely. But I do have a master list of about 50 titles on a document saved on my computer of potential ideas that might be titles in the future. So most of them are probably awful titles, but I like having a backlog of them, so I can always put something at the top of that page and make it start.
It's a lot of writing. 50
it is a lot of writing. If I'm going to write 50 novels, I'll just get cracking on.
So my next question again is going to go back to being another UK CBC favourite. What's your most memorable moments as an author?
Yeah, I got asked this a couple of weeks ago, so I've already got my answer logged up in there, actually. Probably for me, there's a handful of really kind of standout ones that I kind of look back on and think, you know, wow. I got invited to chair a panel at the Harrogate Crime Festival about 4 or 5 years ago. And I was on stage with Lee Child, and that was kind of one of those moments where you look around at a crowd of about 800 people, 900 people, and Lee Child sat next to you, and you're thinking, wow, this is quite a moment. This is quite a scary thing. You know, so that was kind of like a big moment, thinking, you know, this is something special. And I think for my last book, I had a launch event in Hull, and we did it in a theatre place called Cardoma. And when we packed the place out, we saw friends and family and other writers in the city, and that was kind of a really kind of nice, validating moment to have so much support from my own city, effectively. So that was probably those two, I think, the big moments for me. I look back on and think I'm going to have to work really hard to top them in the future.
I suppose, yeah, the one I remember most was I think I got to the top 20 in the Amazon charts in rural noir, and surrounded by Ian Rankin books. And I realised after about 5 seconds of you know, glory, that I'd read every one of his books, but I bet he hasn't bought a single one of mine.
Yeah, I suppose for me, one moment that was quite exciting was I got to chair Michael Morpurgo at the Edinburgh Book Festival. That was quite exciting. I know he's not a crime writer, but because I'm also a children's writer, I have a lot of children's events, and I would have actually been at the Edinburgh Book Festival this year, and I was delighted to have been asked. I was so excited. I was going to be in the Bailey Gifford tent with when we get to the Island novel about a Syrian refugee boy on the run across Scotland. And look what's happening. Yeah, so, you know, it was, the whole festival was cancelled. So, so that would have been a really important moment, and I hope I might still enjoy that moment. But yeah.
You all sound like you've got very different characters and things in your books. You have certain experts that you call upon to help you research, make sure that you get things like the historical things accurate, the police procedures right, the private detection techniques accurate.
Yeah, I suspect my answer is going to be very different to Paul and Alex's, because I deliberately chose a private investigator so I could sidestep a lot of the procedure element. I did write an unpublished novel with a police character as a lead, and I did manage to kind of sort of smoke out a couple of police friends who could help me with the procedure and stuff. I found this such a difficult thing to research and write that when I knew that novel wasn't going to be published and I had to write something new and different, a private investigator was partly appealing because I didn't have to do any research around it, and he could go wherever he liked within reason. As long as somebody will open the door to him, he can go there. So, you know, I've tried to kind of sidestep research, largely speaking, which I guess is very different to obviously historical novels that Alex has to write, I suspect.
With historical novels, I just read and read and read and read, and it is quite tricky because history is all about more than two different versions. It's all about interpretations, and when I was younger, I used to find that quite difficult. You know, the balance of, you know, which is the right version, or does it matter which is the right version, and all that. So that can be tricky. But I just read and read. I just read lots. And I suppose it would depend on the subject I was dealing with as to how I would check my historical details and the accuracy. But basically, just reading everything, and you know, and I think that's why I would find it really hard to write a crime novel, crime procedural, because although this is a crime panel, I don't strictly speaking write crime, although there are crimes in my books. But I would find that very hard because I know absolutely nothing about police procedure and all that kind of stuff. I don't know a thing about any of that. So I'd find that quite difficult. But I'm sure that when you watch BBC crime dramas and things like that, I'm sure they take liberties. I'm sure, like for instance, I was watching The Bridge last night. I've never watched it before. And the policeman is rung up in the middle of the night. And I thought, I'm sure policemen aren't always ringing each other up in the middle of the night, you know, unless I'm wrong. But you know how it always seems like, oh yes, I've got to answer a call at 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm sure that isn't the way they really do it, because they wouldn't be paid enough for a start. But I don't know.
Yeah, I've got a police inspector friend who helps a great deal, but I take your point, Alex. I've had to wade through manuals of police procedure and chief inspector's reports and assistant this and that stuff. And if there's ever a legal issue, I have to check it in law books or online. And I'm wondering with Nick if the next book I go down the private detective route, because it's becoming a bit irksome. It's all accurate all the time, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think there's a lot more ex-police officers writing crime novels as well now and offering their services as consultants. So I think help is out there to help you kind of get it right. But as you say, you've got to marry that realism and the correctness of the procedure with kind of a fast-paced crime novel as well. And that's probably the tricky thing to do, I suspect.
Yeah, there's a whole series of what are called howdunit books, aren't there, really? But you've still got to read them, and they're not exactly the most exciting things to read sometimes. So yes, accuracy is hard work, really.
What do you find the most difficult part of like the writing process?
Oh, I can answer this straight away, actually. It's not the writing of the novel, it's trying to get published. I am published, but it's the rejections, and right from the beginning, it's the difficulty of getting support from the industry. I would say that's far harder to deal with than any of the writing I've ever done. You know, it's because it's often there are a lot of contacts and circles that you move in, and I find that really difficult. So I find that far harder than the actual writing. Don't know how anybody else feels about that.
Self-discipline, really. Just sitting there thinking, oh, I've got my computer switched on. I'll just have a look at Facebook or Instagram, or I'll just look something up on Google, or I'll just see what the football scores are. And it's just that self-discipline to keep at it when you're not particularly flowing that day. That's hard for me. I don't know if Nick feels the same.
Yeah, I think you just have to accept, don't you, that maybe for every 10 writing days, there'll be one really good one, and probably 7 or 8 really sort of ones where you feel like you're pulling teeth out and you just got to slog your way through 1,000 words. So yeah, I think that point about discipline is really, really important. And what Alex said about kind of finding support as well, it comes in many forms, doesn't it? Support, whether it's from the industry or whether it's from other readers and other writers who can help. There's lots of things to deal with. I think as a writer, the thing I always find hardest is making a start. You seem to think that making a start will be the easiest point because you kind of got the opening scene in your head. You think you've kind of refined it and it's going to be really exciting and set the scene for the novel. But I find if I can't get it right, I can't let myself move on to the next part of the novel until I've got that early part sorted and I'm completely happy with it. So I tend to rewrite my opening scenes, maybe the first opening 10,000 words, 5 or 6 times before I kind of feel happy with it. And it feels like I'm doing an awful lot of hard work, which is going nowhere until I get that right, and then I can kind of move on, and then it gets a little bit easier. I think the actual sitting down to write and kind of wanting to sit down to write, which you talk about, Paul.
So you were talking about getting distracted by social media, and I know we've all gone online with like book festivals and things like that. But when there isn't lockdown, how useful do you find things like social media as an author?
Yes, I do find it so useful. Well, no, let me put it differently. I find it very necessary, but I don't particularly enjoy it. I think there's an awful lot of effort goes in that just seems to disappear into nowhere for relatively little return. And I do find, at times, I find Facebook very irritating, really irritating. I don't like the idea of this ungoverned megalith out there. I really don't like that at all. I don't like the tax dodging element of Amazon. I don't like the tax dodging element of Facebook. So morally and ethically, I struggle with it. But it's a tool that one has to use. You don't really have much choice, I don't think.
Yeah, I would agree with that, actually. I'm completely on the same page there. That, yeah, I mean, that sums it up. It's a necessary tool. You have to, as a writer now, you've got to use it, and you have to use, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And I find it all very, it can be difficult. And I do prefer to have days off where I just don't look at it. Because, I mean, there is evidence that it can make people feel quite rubbish about themselves. It can affect people's self-esteem, because you see everybody celebrating, wow, I'm having wonderful successes, and you wake up every morning and that's, so, but then you do it yourself, or sometimes I will put on and say, I'm having successes, and I'm sure I'm making somebody else feel rubbish when they look at that. And, I don't think it's that. It's a necessary tool for writers, and it's wonderful in the sense that it's keeping me connected with lots of people, that I wouldn't otherwise have met online, including this, but also you have to be careful because, I don't think it's all that great for us as human beings, but it's a necessary thing, isn't it? But how do you feel, Nick, about it?
Yeah, I kind of share your concerns about the ethical and the moral sort of elements of social media and Amazon and so on. But I genuinely like it. I really like Twitter as a thing. And I think kind of what helps me is to just think of it as being a social thing. It's not just a platform to sell yourself and your books. It's a chance to share other people's news and other people's views and engage with a wider crime writing community, whether it's readers, writers, bloggers, and so on. And I just find that I'm not connecting it to some kind of end result, but it feels a lot more pleasurable, and a lot more fun to do things like that. And off the back of it, I found myself being booked for events and festivals. It's been a big help in spreading word about our festival in Hull and engaging with people who might want to come along and enjoy it. Yeah, and it's a nice way to start building friendships before hopefully you get the chance to meet in the real world in library events and festivals and so on. So I find it a really useful tool, and I really kind of like it. I didn't really use it quite widely. You know, if you look on my Twitter feed, you're bound to see some stuff about football on it and things like that, and you know, anything but booked half the time. But you know, I like the social element of it and being connected with other people while I'm sat at home, sort of writing maybe all day without seeing other people, essentially.
I think we're at the watershed moment, aren't we, too, in that, you know, we're zooming now, as it were, and the pandemic's changing communication systems heavily. And I suspect once the pandemic, if it is ever over, is over, we will move on in different ways in terms of technological communication. So this is kind of practice almost for that.
Yeah, I think festivals will probably reconfigure a bit next year. I suspect there'll be, you know, all being well, we'll have the physical festivals, but alongside that, I think we'll probably run digital strands as well, because it just gives you a chance to reach so many different readers and people, doesn't it? Then you would maybe just normally get on a physical location, whether it's Hull or whether it's Edinburgh, wherever the festival is. You kind of have to be within travelling distance to get there, but technology changes that, and I think that's something we've learned a little bit about in the last few months.
Well, I know, and I'm sure Lindsay can chip in on this as well, as like digital festival organisers, that we've had lots of feedback from people in our group that they've seen authors that they'd never get to meet because they live in America or they live in Australia and they wouldn't get to these live events. And it's really good. Like, they really enjoy seeing them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. Sorry, I'm just going to agree. Just say, yeah, definitely what Caz is saying. You know, they would never get a chance to go to bloody Scotland, but the fact they're getting to sit and see you guys, or you know, they might not get the Edinburgh Book Festival, they might not get Outright, or to think. I mean, I've never been to Harrogate. I'd love to go, and it's that opportunity to sit with authors and speak to them that you would never get to see and get the chance to even listen to their books, and giving the up and coming authors the chance to like shine on the digital platform as well, where the publishers maybe don't have the money, or you know, the some, you know, they won't ever get the chance because they're not big enough names to bring in, you know, the people that some festivals and need to put on the event. So I think it's a good way forward. I mean, I'm all for the actual physical events. I miss them. But you know, digital is always a good way to go as well.
Absolutely.
That's true. That's a very good point, actually. That's yeah.
Yeah, so I think we'll end up with this kind of like slightly mixture of the two going forward next year, where we'll have digital strands running alongside physical festivals, as well as, I think, like with Caz's group on Facebook, I think things like that will continue to grow as well. So yeah, I think it's been a bit of a game changer, really, hasn't it?
It's great for people.
Yeah.
I know me and the girl who run the author chats in our group, we love it because we're just basically massive book fans. So we're getting the chance to like interview all these authors that we really enjoy, and it's just like a treat for us.
Yeah, and I think it's probably the same for Paul and Alex, but you know, if you're a writer, you're a reader as well, so it's great to be able to connect and see these events at the same time, and like you say, listen to authors you maybe wouldn't get the chance to hear normally. So, you know, I've really enjoyed it from a reading perspective as well.
Yeah. So I'm going to hit you with another UK Crime Book Club favourite question now. How do you celebrate each publication day?
Oh dear. Differently, I think. Differently each time. Cumulatively. With great relief. All of those. Thank God it's finished.
Yeah.
And then you start the next one.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, taking a day off and just feeling relaxed and or actually I'm not sure you do get much of a day off because you're constantly thinking, oh, I've got to sort out the book launches and all the rest of it. But it's quite a busy time in a way. But yeah, just relaxing, doing favorite things, relaxing in a very quiet way. I'm a very quiet person. Lots of dog walking and reading and just completely relaxing.
Yeah, I always feel guilty when I'm not writing as well. So having a day off is a little bit better, doesn't it? I think, and a little bit scary to writers. But yeah, when I had my last book was published 2 or 3 years back, as I mentioned earlier, we had a big launch event in Hull for it and a really nice night of friends and family coming along. But with the next book due out in 2 weeks' time, we're not going to have a big nice launch party for it because obviously we can't get together like that, can we, in public spaces at the moment? So yeah, I'm not entirely sure. I think we'll probably just maybe do something at home with my family, possibly, and look to do something online. Yeah, it's difficult to know what to do for the best, isn't it, really? But yeah, I think we'll probably just have a drink at home as much as anything this time, and hopefully something later in the year.
I suspect we all share the same internal feeling that there is, if you write a book, there's an immense sense of achievement for just doing that, because it's a very difficult thing to do. And when you finished it and it's out there is something rather warm about it. It's rather wonderful, I think, really.
Yeah,
and that's never gone away.
It's also slightly terrifying, of course, because you're waiting for those initial reviews to come through and see what people think of it. So, you know, it's kind of a pleasant time, but it's also quite a scary time, I think, at the same point.
Yeah, that's true. It is. It's a mixture of both, isn't it? Because it is very difficult to finish a book, and you know, and there is that feeling, you know, you like it because you wouldn't have written it otherwise, but you know, you really don't know how other people will feel about it. You know, there's a lot of uncertainty. You know, what are they going to make of it?
Would you ever be tempted to write about our current times? It'd make an interesting kind of locked-in mystery novel.
Well, I think I do anyway. I mean, I think I write sort of dark humor into the books, but there's a sort of rural noir element, and noir implies a sort of broad social critique, really. So my last book was based around a conflict between fairly unscrupulous housing developers and an orchard that they needed to destroy. And, you know, I live in Ciderland. I live in South Somerset, surrounded by apple trees and orchards and cider drinkers and other drunks. So that I do write social critique into my books anyway. I don't think I want to change that. I think that's quite important for me.
But would you talk about the pandemic and things in your books?
Personally,
I wouldn't. I don't know about Nick and Alex, though.
No, I mean, I'm the same as Paul. You know, writing about kind of reality is very important. And when I'm writing about Hull, it's about regeneration, and it's about money and about power and corruption and those type of issues. But in terms of writing about a pandemic at the moment, I'm probably like Alex and Paul. I'm partway through another novel now, and I'm kind of thinking, you know, do I reference it directly? How much of an issue do I want to make it in the novel? And I think the answer is not very much. You know, it's in the background of the novel where people might make an odd reference to it, like you almost kind of like, you remember when we had the COVID last year, you know, and people maybe will stand off slightly from each other because I think that's how it's going to go in the next sort of 6 months to 12 months. But no, I don't think actually directly addressing the pandemic at the moment is what people are going to want to read particularly. I think we've all had probably more than enough about something in the last 3 or 4 months, and we're all probably just a little bit sick of it, I think. So no, I don't want to address it directly as a writer, I don't think, not at this moment. I mean, maybe for Alex as a historical writer, you've got the chance to use parallels, haven't you, between previous pandemics and previous historical things like that, which you can then kind of take forward into the next novel, possibly. I don't know. There's maybe different ways for historical writers to address pandemics, I think.
The funny thing is, I was, you know, before all the pandemic happened, I had finished a novel that I just sent out to my publisher, Fledgling, that is about, it sounds really weird, but it's about death as a female protagonist, being interviewed by a journalist. I know it sounds bizarre, being interviewed by a journalist from a top magazine about the different, you know, major people that she has come across and worked with. And it's a kind of way of pulling together lots of short, structured stories as well, and narratives, and you know, it's got Van Gogh in it and Virginia Woolf and people like that. And before we knew any of this was going to happen, one of my chapters was called Quarantine. And if it is published, when people read it, they will assume I wrote this because of the pandemic, but I didn't at all. It was just what inspired me, because it's about the village in Derbyshire, where they cut themselves off. And the reason why I wrote this was because it had always been in my imagination, because when I was a child in primary school, we made a film about it. We were all extras in this kind of village with our shawls on. We all had to die in the graveyard, you know, and she was filming us, and she said, right, only a few of you die at a time, you know. So when the film came out, you know, we, instead of just dribs and drabs all dying slowly, we all suddenly went boom, and the whole class just dropped dead in a graveyard, because that's what primary school children do, you know. They think, I'll be the first to die. And but so this was always in my imagination, that the school I went to was so good at making history come alive, and it stayed with me for forever, that story. And I also remember my dad taking us to Derbyshire and talking about this village, and how they were very brave and cut themselves off, and you know, and risked their own lives just to stop it spreading. So I do have a chapter in there called Quarantine, and it's a long chapter about the plague, but it isn't based on what we're going through now. It's just accidental. And I think you're right that people won't really want to read about what's just happened to us. But on the other hand, I was thinking about this when the pandemic first began, and I was thinking about how all my characters or my novels, the stories always take place where the characters feel trapped. I don't know why, it's just something that I do. You know, with Jill, the first book, all the characters were trapped by a blizzard and a snowstorm up on Sheriffmuir in 1995, that terrible winter. And I think that is a secret, isn't it, or it was, of old-fashioned Agatha Christie type crimes, and also plays and drama. A good way of trying to convey a good story and plot is to trap your characters, isn't it? So I suppose we are all trapped at the moment, and being trapped does seem to be a theme that I accidentally just deal with in all of my books. You know, Mary Queen of Scots is trapped. She's in her prison cell. In Darker Ends, I've got 2 children trapped by blizzards again, and in an inn, while their parents have disappeared in the storm. And you know, so being trapped is obviously a theme.
We're really close to the end of our time, so do you want to just remind us all again about your books just before we finish, because there's a couple of minutes left. We start with Nick again.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, I'm the author of the Joe Garrity series of novels, private investigator novels set in my home city of Hull. I'm the 4th in the trilogy. It's called The Sound of the Sinners, and it's published on the 28th of August by Fahrenheit Press. So yeah, I'm excited to have a new book out. Keep an eye for that one.
Yeah, I'm Paul Toolan, yes, as you can see from my name on the screen. And I'm the author of the Inspector Zig Batten series, crime novels set in rural Somerset. The third one is called An Easter Killing and takes place over Easter weekend. So it does have religious overtones in a sort of way. The one I'm writing at the moment is called The Killing of Queen Mab, which is set in Somerset and in Greece.
My name's Alex Nye, and I'm the author of these 2 books published by Fledgling, Arguing with the Dead, about Mary Shelley, and For My Sins, about Mary Queen of Scots. And I write historical novels, and also I've written 4 books for children as well, published by both Floris Books and Fledgling.
Excellent. Well, it's been a genuine pleasure to talk to all of you today, and meet you all for the first time.
Thank you, Caz. Thank you.
Thank you, Caz. Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Nick. Lovely to meet you all.
Yeah, same here. It was really nice talking to everybody.
Yes, nice to see Alex actually remain and not disappear. Technology, who would have it? We've still got a minute left. If there's anything that you want to still talk about, I don't know. We've still got a minute left.
We could just let the dog bark and fill it.
Yes.
Yeah. That's my neighbour's dog. It does need to be a little bit quieter, I think. But so far, I'm not doing very well getting it to shut up.
Is it yours?
It's not my dog. It's not my dog. But I don't know. Yeah, I'd like it to be a little bit quieter.
Isn't that a line from a Peter Sellers movie? It's not my dog.
Yeah, I know you're not making animals in novels, are you? But I might just break that rule with the next one possibly and kill a yappy dog. I'm more of a cat person. But of course, I won't kill any animals.
I had that yesterday at 11:30. I sat down and it was fine on Friday, but at 11:30 they just started barking. My neighbours' dogs, and they live. We've got houses to the back of us, houses to the side of us, and they started yapping, and then the other dogs started going, and I'm like, shut up, shut up, shut up. But luckily I was on mute, so you wouldn't have been able to hear it. But I was just like, of all the times to start this, why now? And that's 7 o'clock. So thank you very much, everybody. So the last panel is on at 8 o'clock tonight, and it's UK Crime 2, and it's Emma Salisbury, Dougie Brimson, Pamela St. Abs, and I've forgotten who the last person is. Stupid Lindsay. I'm just, well, my brain is now like complete mush. Last person is
Mark Newman.
How can I forget Mark? And it's a shared by Caz again. But thanks very much, guys, for making it long. It was so interesting to hear about. Obviously, a lot of this has been Scotland, but it's nice to hear out with the UK and find out, what you're all up to and stuff like that. And, yeah, it's really great. The crime writing industry, even the bloggers are great. They're all here to support each other, and just like you can ask questions of like some of the big names, and they'll quite happily, jump the chance to like sit down and tell you, oh, you could do this, we could do that, and it's a really great supportive network. And thank you so much. And I'll just end the broadcast.